Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. We're switching things up a little bit, doing things a little bit differently. By the way, no one saw what you just did because the camera's on me right now.
Oh, well, she could do the wide angle.
Jacob's excited because he's got his Oliver Anthony shirt on. And he knows y'all are going to comment about it. But anyways, we're switching things up a little bit. On these Thursday episodes now, we're going to start them off with listener success stories. We've talked about it over the last couple weeks where we had like close to 100 left over from last year that we never posted. And we also have been getting questions from a lot of listeners who were like, hey, when are you going to do listener success podcasts again? And we haven't done that in like
4 years.
4 years at least. So we're like, why don't we bring it back in some capacity? And we're kicking it off today with Mr. Andrew Butler of Kentucky, who killed a giant deer. Andrew, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on and being our guinea pig, man. I mean, you're the first one. So, Jacob, how you doing?
Oh, doing well. Not as well as Butler. I can't say Andrew because we got two Andrews here. Andrew Maxwell.
It's going to get
Andrew
real
Butler.
confusing real fast.
Confusing real quick.
Yeah, Butler killed a giant. So, super excited to talk to you about this. Real quick, Andrew Butler, specifically, how long have you been a listener to podcasts? And, how did you find out about the show?
Yeah, so a buddy of mine from Alabama I grew up with, used to hunt with a bunch, told me about the show, I believe, in 2020. And I've been listening ever since because that really shaped the way that I started thinking about hunting because I grew up in Mississippi, gun hunting my whole life, rifle hunt, 30-06 like everybody else. Switched over to a bow, and because of the military, couldn't bow hunt all that often. And once I got stationed at my last duty station where I'm at currently, I started bow hunting a lot more, and you guys 100% changed the game for me.
Awesome, dude. Well, I'm excited. Well, I do want to kind of get into this story for this deer. So, kind of walk us through it. First off, was there anything what's the background of hunting this area, and I guess the steps in order to kill this buck? And was there any kind of takeaways from the podcast along with the story that was impactful for this deer?
Yeah, for sure. So the area I was hunting, it's government lands, public land. You can only access by foot unless you're disabled. And the area specifically I was trying to hunt in had been pressured so much I had to walk a pretty good ways in there to find these deer. And it's one way in, one way out. So playing the wind on the approach, not only the sit itself was a key factor that I had messed up years past. And a few episodes, it really helped me. I remember in the past, it's an older episode, the guy talked about a killing wind. I used that a bunch of times. And Josh Driver's episode, I believe it was 512, about really honing in on the core areas of these bucks. That really, really changed the game for me. And because of my job, I don't have the most time to scout. Oftentimes I can't scout until season's already started. So really taking that in and using the time to scout versus wasting sits. It's really kind of how I went about it this year.
I got you. So you might have just answered my question, but did you have history with this deer? Did you know he even existed, or were you just going and hunting sign?
Yeah. So funny thing is, another thing you can't do at this place is use cameras. So I don't have the luxury to use cell cameras. Otherwise, maybe I'd kill a buck like this every year. I don't know. But yeah, honing in on the sign, the food source. There was an episode you guys had last year about early season food source, finding the feed tree. I use that a lot, and it got me on a lot of does. I saw some younger bucks. I kind of had to deviate from that area just because only certain areas are open certain times. And I went back to an older area that I had some history with. I'd seen some good bucks in, but I never really took the time to find, in that episode, just going back to it, he talked about droppings and feed sign, finding not only fresh but old as well, kind of showing that it's a repeatable thing. They're coming in there often. And when I really honed in on that and just kept looking, I really found a good spot back in there.
Yeah, by the way, that killing wind episode you're talking about, that was with Travis Murray. That was probably about 3, maybe 4 years ago we had him on, at least that specific episode. So Travis, that's something I'm actually interested in. How was a killing wind, which when we're talking about killing wind for all the viewers and maybe new podcast listeners that haven't listened to those episodes with Travis Murray, he was talking about kind of getting the wind where the wind's in that buck's face as he's walking in and you're just off wind. You're just far enough off that trail that, the wind's blowing in his face, your wind's kind of blowing by that deer. Deer doesn't quite smell you. So how did that play a factor specifically hunting out there and all the access and everything?
Yeah, so that part comes right towards the end of the story. I might want to tell the whole story before I get to that, but long story short, I ended up sitting in this spot and I hunted it. I counted 23 times. 13 of those times were all day sits. It was 3-mile walk one way. So I put in some miles for this deer. But after I saw what I saw the first time I did a full day sit, I wasn't going anywhere else. Yeah, long story short, I was in a spot the day I killed him, and I'd been getting blown at by deer all morning long. Lunchtime rolled around. I was like, that's it. Enough's enough. I'm not going home, but I need to move. And I moved because I'd seen deer come from the north side of me to my left as I was facing east. And when I moved, it gave me just enough wind advantage. So if those deer continued to come through that way, I would have a shot on them. And it ended up working out.
So let's go into a little bit more about the story. So you said you set this area 23 times. Talk to us about the process. Did you visually see a buck in there that you were really going after? Like, walk us through that the whole process.
Man, I'll be honest with you, it was crazy. I had never seen this many deer in my life and never seen this many bucks in my life. And that core area episode by Josh Driver is what did it for me. I went in, I found fresh and old scrapes. I'd been hunting closer to a fire break or old logging road, as we call it in the South, Mississippi, Alabama. There's an old logging road, and I'd pushed in off of it, but I never went very deep. And I looked on Onyx. I use Onyx a lot. And I found creek drainages where they intersected. There was another episode about that. It's so much that I'd heard from you guys. I was kind of trying to put together and study, honestly. I went down to where those drainages intersected, and I decided to scout there one morning, and I found old and fresh sign and a bunch of scrapes that kind of made what I thought was a loop into a thicket. Couldn't go in the thicket and verify the loop connecting, but it seemed pretty good. And I started sitting there. And the first time I sat there, I lost count of how many deer I saw, but I saw over 10 bucks. And I saw 3 of them my goal this year was a 150 plus because I shot a 140 the year before. And I saw at least 3 of them that first sit were what I thought would be 150s. They just never came within range. So that being said, that's where I was hunting the rest of the year. And it was incredible. It was, even though I didn't kill deer 22 of the 23 times I sat there, it was just such an incredible experience to see that many deer and to be so close to that many deer, all because of the guys you guys brought on that just dropped some serious knowledge.
This could turn into like an hour and a half podcast so fast.
That's why all the old interviews are all an hour and 10 minutes long.
I know. Golly.
But I got to ask you something, Andrew Butler, specifically on this. So when someone hears, like when I hear someone says they hunt a spot 23 times, I'm thinking in my head, like, holy crap, dude. Like that's, you hear a couple people, there's a couple different thought processes. Like if you do that, my thought process is like every time I'd feel like almost like the encounters would go down because you're just intrusive into the area unless you get super clean entrance and exit access to the place, which I want you to kind of talk about a little bit. But also, were you hunting the same tree or were you just bouncing around in a general area those 23 times?
So a lot of the times I was hunting the same tree because there weren't very many good trees to climb, because out here you're not supposed to cut limbs on trees. It's some forestry management stuff they have in place. But yeah, a lot of the time I hunted the same tree a few times, and I was trying obviously to kill a mature buck, but they turned out to be more so observational sits than anything. And I was just kind of soaking it all in, developing the pattern, seeing where they moved, and I would adjust and try to hone in closer. And the rut was coming up. I shot this deer on November 18th, and I started hunting that spot late October. I sat the tree when I got down and moved that day I shot him was a tree I'd never sat in. I barely got up it. I got a Novix similar to a lone wolf hang on, so I was able to go around some limbs, and I had to. I didn't have a choice. But I think I sat in 4 different trees across those days, and it was within 100 yards of each other. My approach.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Luckily for me, the wind up there in that area tends to blow the same direction, and it borders a lot of private agricultural land, crop fields and whatnot. And the good thing about the deer in this area, a lot of them are on that private land in the evenings, and they move in to the public land because it's safer. It's bow only area, so they don't have gunshots to spook them near as much. And with the wind typically being out the east, northeast, it makes it fairly easy to get in there with the wind in your face at least. And I've always heard from people, hunt the wind. If the wind ain't right, don't go. But I've heard from a lot of people saying, like, if you do that, you won't hunt but 5 times a year. So I only have so much time because of my job, and fortunate for me, I had a little bit more time than usual last year, and I used every second of it. And if I didn't have a wife as good as I do, ain't no way I would have shot that buck. I gotta give a lot of credit to her and my kids because they were super supportive.
That's awesome, man. I'm curious about behind every successful man, by the way, there's a good woman, right? I'm curious about the area too that you're sitting, like this 100-yard area. Just a little bit more about what the habitat there actually ended up looking like. Was it kind of like you mentioned? There's a thicket there. Was there kind of a soft edge coming out of that thicket where you still had underbrush kind of spilling out into the woods, or was it just like bam, there's the thicket, hard edge, and you're just kind of hunting around that hard edge?
Yeah. So, let's see the best way I can describe this. So, where I was sitting, I faced the thicket most often towards the east, and behind me there was a series of 3 creek drainages that intersected, came down from the north, intersected, and went east and west, and they just kind of bled off. But the main drainage came north to south, and I sat off of that creek drainage intersection on kind of like an acorn flat or an oak flat, and there's a lot of acorns dropping that earlier in the season, and they were still dropping a little bit later than usual, which kind of honed me in there and just seeing all the sign and whatnot. And to the east was a thicket edge, but like you said, Andrew, kind of faded in. It wasn't like a hard thicket edge like you see in pine thickets in Mississippi, and I'm sure Alabama too, because there are some hard edges like that. It wasn't exactly that, but there was some undergrowth, like you were saying, coming off of that. And the bucks, when the rut kicked off, the bucks would just chase does around that edge, and it was kind of like a cutover to the south of that. They kind of went up a hill as well, and it was just perfect habitat for bucks. Like, it was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, man, this looks incredible. And it was matching everything that those guys were saying in those past episodes.
I'm also curious, you mentioned like a hill. Is it real hilly terrain? Like, I'm not really familiar with the place you're talking about. Is it real hilly? Like, were you hunting a thermal hub? Because you're talking about 3 drainages coming together.
So I was trying to, it's not like Arkansas, some areas over there for some of the guys you've had. And it's not like on the East Coast, some of those really, really hilly terrain, but there are some hills. I wouldn't say it was more than a couple 100 feet in elevation across a mile spread. Really, it was kind of mild, but it was enough that I knew that my thermals in the right time of day would either fall down in that creek drainage or they would rise up and out. And I believe in the afternoon that kind of is what helped me when I made that move that I did. I guess I'll never know, but I know the wind, making that move using the kill and win thing that the guy talked about in that older episode really helped, because it worked like point blank proven. I mean, he was locked down on a doe. She got behind me, started to stomp, but it was too late. He was at 10 steps, and that was it.
So let's go a little bit more to the hunt itself. Again, you were hunting this area so much and getting so many visual observations, which is just mind-boggling. I mean, it was
incredible.
So how did you start fine-tuning the hunt? So was it just something that you were just focused on, like, at some point I'm going to get an opportunity because there's so many different bucks in this area? And like, walk us through your thought process into that final hunt when you actually were able to, get an opportunity at that deer.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, I would approach from the west. I'd walk that fire break or logging road, as you'd call it, and I'd get to a certain point and I'd cut straight in. I just had Onyx on my phone. I wasn't using a light when I walked in. I was going real slow. So a lot of times I had to start this walk at like 2:30 in the morning, because I also didn't want to sweat on the way to the stand and ruin all the scent control that I'd put in so much time to help. My wife put in so much time washing my clothes and making sure she didn't mix them, So I was really having to take that in consideration. But I'd cut straight in, take my time, nice and slow, because there's a lot of down trees and whatnot to look out for. And I'd get there and set up in the spot. And from the earlier November sits that I had, I wasn't quite close enough. I sat just off the drainage a little bit, and I'd have a lot of does, and I'd have some smaller bucks come through. But if and when I would see a more mature buck, he would be closer to that thicket edge, or he would come out of that underbrush, cut over looking area that really just looked perfect for him. But I was afraid to go in there too close. I was still seeing him, and early on, I thought it's just a matter of time. But part of me got impatient. Part of me, just continued to see the same thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to move in a little bit to get a better shot. And I did that. And I just moved straight in. I was about 30 yards off that thicket edge. And I had, at that point, some of the deer were coming behind me, which initially they were kind of walking that creek drainage. And I didn't put two and two together immediately. And that day I shot him, like I said, I got winded. I got blown at like 3 times, and I hadn't been blown at all year. So I knew something wasn't going to work. I mean, that wasn't going to work in that setup specifically. But most of the bucks I saw, if they were on that thicket edge, they were running it. They were chasing a hot doe that had just come through. And the shot opportunities were, little to nothing. I'd have a couple small windows maybe, but I was just this close to shooting a 150 or, a mature buck multiple times. I had this one buck that I hope's still there next year because he was every bit of 150, and there's no telling what he's going to be next year. But he skirted me twice at like 48, 50 yards. And I just, for whatever reason, like shooting a target, sure, that's one thing. But when he was right there doing the thing, I was like, man, I can't mess this up. So yeah, when I moved to that spot closer to the thicket edge, I had some deer come from up north the way most of the does do, and a couple of younger bucks. And I saw that buck that I'm hoping's there next year is around a 150, typical 10. He skirted me about 55 yards, didn't blow or nothing, but he went up into that cutover area as that thicket wrapped around towards the east. And after getting blown at the second or third time, I may have got blown at 4 or 5 times, but it was a lot. I waited till they got out of the area, and I just climbed down. I said, I'm going to move over there where that bigger buck walked through, and I'm going to get off wind to him, thinking that killing wind episode. I was like, if I can get off wind, the worst case, I get blown at a 4th time. It ain't going to hurt anything at this point because I've already been blown at so many times. And I moved. It was about noon or 12:30. I moved. I got over there as quiet as I could. And it wasn't 45 minutes later, I had a small 6-point walked along that thicket edge, straight in front of me, 5 steps from the base of my tree. Didn't smell me, didn't do anything. I was like, all right, confidence boosted a little bit. I'm going to stay here. 15, 20 minutes later, after he disappeared towards that creek drainage and went wherever he went, I look to my left and I see a doe at 25 yards. You know how deer sneak up on you sometimes. And I mean, the leaves are dry. I have no idea how she snuck up on me, but they always seem to do it. And 20 yards, she's right there. There's a down oak tree that she had to hop over, which made me a little nervous. But a few seconds after I saw her, I looked behind her and saw the biggest deer I've ever seen on feet in my life. And I was tore up from that moment on. But luckily, she jumped over that log, and I believe he was locked down with her because he was obviously a mature buck, and they lock down a little sooner sometimes, and they won't come in and start making scrapes until, they know the gig's going on. And I just heard that on the episode you guys had on really recent. I was listening to it the other day. The guy was talking about the scrape loop and whatnot. And yeah, she hopped over and she started walking behind me, which made me nervous because I had some limbs and stuff in the way of where he was. He had just jumped over that down oak tree. And she walks behind me. She starts stomping a little bit, and I'm sitting there with my bow. I got my release on it already. And I'm just hoping and praying that she doesn't blow and bust him out of there because he just needed to take 2 steps. It wasn't going to be the prettiest shot in the world, but straight down, I was going to hit him here, and it was going to come out right here, and it was going to be good. And yeah, thankfully she didn't blow and he didn't spook, and he took another step, and I just put it right over his shoulder, and that was it. He ran off 40 yards, and I watched him go down right there. And I just couldn't believe what I'd just done. I had no idea until I got on the ground and picked him up how big he was, but I knew he was about 300 pounds, and he was a non-typical, and it was just unreal.
All right. First off, talk to me about the emotions that went through your mind when you actually laid hands on that deer. Because it's one thing. It's one thing when you first shoot one, you kind of have an idea what he was like, but you're not really quite sure. Do you remember the emotions of you walking up to that deer?
Oh yeah, I'll never forget them. So to preface this was the second buck I've ever shot in my life with a bow. The buck I shot last year, or sorry, season before last that I sent you guys, he's about a 140. That was the first buck I ever shot in my life, and I shot him at 8 steps, and I shot this one at 10 steps. And to have shot the buck I did the season before was a blessing in itself. To shoot this deer the next season and actually accomplish the goal of 150 that I wanted, that I was like, man, that's a tough one. You've only shot one buck with a bow, man. Tons of does, but it ain't a buck. Definitely not a mature buck. But to do that, to put in all the work, the miles, the stress on the family, and my wife being as supportive as she was, like it was, yeah, I cried like a little girl, man. I ain't gonna lie. Like it was unbelievable. It was first person I called was her, and she was just as excited as I was, and that meant the world to me. Obviously, I called my dad next, and he was just over the moon. And then I was like, you know what? I should probably get down and go see this deer I shot, because I'm just sitting up here calling everybody, and I got to get my hands on him. And I climbed down, the shakiest climb down of a tree I've ever done in my life. And I walked over there, and he was just a giant, like the biggest deer I've ever seen. Just body, rack, everything. He had his G2s were split 3 ways like a turkey foot. I'm a big turkey hunter, by the way. So I thought that was really cool. Man, it was just unbelievable. I just looked at him and didn't say a word for at least 10 minutes. Like, it was just crazy.
Dude, I cannot.
I'll never forget it.
I can't imagine.
And at 10 steps, like it was. I don't think I would have hit him if he was 20 yards away. I would have just been, it was unreal. But yeah, my wife's she's a saint. She supported me through the whole thing, and she was just as excited as I was, and it meant the world to me.
Dude, I can't even imagine what I would do.
So I've got to ask, what was the process to get that deer out with him being that far? Like, did y'all just cart him out? Don't tell me y'all drug him out.
I mean, we drug him about 800 yards to that fire break. It's, man, yeah, good friends.
See, I think this could have been a great training opportunity for somebody. I'm sure you might know a couple of helicopter pilots, but hey, we're going to practice an extraction.
Yeah.
Here's the coordinates.
Yeah.
Come on, listen, we're going to practice an extraction real quick.
Change it to grid.
Yeah.
Change it to grid. Drop it down. I'll hook him up.
Let's go. Time. Let's go.
Next season.
Yeah, next season.
Next season.
Yeah.
Next season, if I shoot that other one, I'll call you guys and let you know how it went.
Well, that's what I was about to ask about is next season, now that you have this history with the area, you've got all these buck encounters, you've got potential targets, and one unique advantage of you hunting that spot so many times is that you've got such a good sample size of like what's going on there. Like you mentioned Daniel Williams' episode a couple minutes ago about those annual patterns. So I'm assuming where you're going to be around November 18th of this coming year.
Bro, I got chills right now just thinking about it. You don't even know. I cannot wait, man. You guys have been awesome. The guys y'all brought on, y'all's knowledge and everything, like I can't preach y'all up enough. It has changed the game for me because I just soaked it all in and I saw results and I was like, man, this stuff, these guys know what they're talking about, So I mean, it shows. Second buck ever, I shoot something like that. Anybody can do it if they just take the time, dedicate themselves, and hopefully your wife's as cool as mine is.
Yeah. Well, so Andrew, I've got to ask, when you're after like this experience in 2 years, going back to back years, killing really good deer. Okay, like I mean, really 2 hammers. What has been some of your biggest takeaways now? So like after like listening to the podcast for a while, applying it, having success. What is your thought? Has your thought process changed now, like moving forward, like not only hunting that area, but like now after having that experience and these experiences, how you might approach different areas and just the thought process there?
Oh man, it definitely has, in so many ways. Like people have to work, and you don't always have time to scout as much as you'd like to. take time to scout. Even if the season started, take some time to scout your way in, scout your way out. In the early season, most of the time you don't hunt mornings anyways because of their patterns. You're just gonna bust them more than anything. So get there a little early, scout your way in. Don't be afraid to walk, trudge through some areas. Obviously, don't go stomping through bedding on a place you want to hunt, but don't be afraid to push the limit a little bit and scout and look for that good sign, like that episode before. Like fresh sign's great, but that could be the one and only time they're going to come out there. Like you need to find old sign too, like all of it. Don't be afraid to move if your hunt's not going well and you're planning on sitting all day. Like don't be afraid to move. Even if you bump a deer, like move. An hour or two later, some new deer might roll through. I mean, that's what happened to me. I'd never seen that buck. I'd seen 10, 12 bucks. I could tell you which one was which. I'd seen him so many times. I had videos, pictures. I had never seen that deer before. Like there was 3 other shooters in there that were 150 plus, but nothing like him. And I'd never seen him. And if I wouldn't have pushed the envelope a little bit and scouted in deeper than I was honestly comfortable with, it would have never happened. Finding the buck core areas, like listen to the Josh Driver podcast. Like that guy changed the game for me on finding these buck core areas. Cause I mean, back home shooting a 100-inch buck, like an 8-point, basket rack 8 points, pretty good for most people. But if you want to kill a mature deer, I mean, whatever 6 times 23 is, like that's what it takes mileage wise sometimes. Cause I mean, I put in a lot of miles, and because of what these guys were, teaching me, listening to these episodes, like I just took it as gospel, and studied it and researched it and went out there and found what they were talking about. And yeah, it changed the game. And if you can learn thermals, like you can really use that to your advantage. It's a hard concept to grasp. It took me first couple seasons after I had to listen to the episode 3 or 4 times and like Google some stuff, because I would always get mixed up when they rise and when they fall. But once I finally got it, I mean, I watched it work. I watched deer walk under me right in my wind cone, and nothing happened because my thermals were rising up. So
absolutely. Andrew, by the way, what's the number?
Tons of stuff.
What's the number, or Maxwell? Gosh, confusing. Maxwell, what's the number for Josh Driver's episode that's on YouTube now?
It's 512.
512s.
Yeah, so episode 512, we'll link it so people can go watch that one. But yeah, that one has been so we originally released it as I think it was episode 141. So it's a really old episode on the audio feed. Re-released it on YouTube as episode 512. And just over the years, man, that's been the most consistent episode, I think, probably for listener success stories, just like this one, especially on the bigger deer.
That and 290. Well, yeah. For the bigger deer, for sure. By the way, did you ever implement calling at all over there in that spot?
I did. I rattled some, and I had some younger bucks come in. I grunted some. I didn't have much responses from grunts, but that area was already so hot, just left alone. And I realized that after spooking a couple, calling too much. I mean, maybe not spooking them, but they come in nervous, looking for something, and they don't see what they're looking for. And I realized over time, like these deer are already doing the thing here. Like I just need to be here. And yeah, I didn't call it all that day. I don't think I called a few days even leading up to it. But it took me a few hunts to realize that, because I've always been hesitant of doing that. I've heard a couple guys on y'all's podcast saying there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't know.
Yeah. Soft grunts. It's always better to go softer than louder. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think I've been grunting too loud these last couple of years. I'm going to tone it way down this year.
Dude, I'm telling it was awesome last year. Actually, I should have killed 2 bucks in 2 days out of the same tree, same spot, within an hour of each other, grunting the exact same thing, came down the same trail, doing the exact same thing. I'm talking
that's awesome.
Super soft grunts. And again, that's Alabama deer. I know, like when we go to Kansas, it's not going to be like that. Our buddies that live out there is like, don't call soft. You better call loud. First of all, because it's windy. Second of all,
it's windy, man.
The deer are way more aggressive. But yeah, dude, it's changed my perspective, like the calling aspect, just to kind of help, like enhance, like, I've had minimum success calling to a deer I can visually see and get him to come in. But like the ones that like I assume there's one within hearing distance of me, in doing that, it seemed to work. I mean, both my Alabama deer are called in or I killed last year. I called in one rattling, one grunting, which I've never had success rattling. But again, that was a different circumstance.
I killed that buck rattling.
Oh, right there.
Yeah,
it's a good looking
Pretty
hat.
good one.
It's a good looking hat on him too.
yeah, it's a pretty good looking hat, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, Andrew, we can't thank you enough for coming on here and doing this because, like,
thank you guys.
going and doing all these episodes for 7 years now, like the burnout can be a little bit real. I'm not gonna lie, and getting guys like yourself on it and being able to actually talk to you about your success, like, definitely kind of keeps that fire going for us. Because I mean, that's why we do it for real. I mean, it's super encouraging to hear that, especially 2 years in a row killing studs, hammers, absolute hammers.
I can't wait for next season, man.
Well, and two, also, Andrew, we're gonna get you a hat, Southern Outdoorsman hat. We're gonna let you pick whichever hat you want. So we'll get with that after the podcast and everything. But we'll get you some gear.
What?
And
one last question. Hold on. This is the one I want to end it on. Okay, Andrew, if you had to give a piece of advice for a brand new listener or someone who's just now, maybe they just saw this podcast, this segment on YouTube, first time they've ever heard about it, what would be something that you would recommend for someone just getting started? Because there's so many episodes of like figuring out what works for them in their area. Like, just what would your advice be for someone that's brand new, trying to find out more about the show and starting to listen to episodes?
Yeah, I think that one of the last points you hit on was really, really important. Your area. So I'd watched a bunch of things on YouTube, heard other podcasts. I'm from the South, and a lot of those guys up north, that stuff works there. It don't work here. I would 100% like tell someone to find episodes in y'all's podcast with some of those three names, or any of them for that matter, that are in the same general area, and not only listen to it, take notes, and take those notes with you or memorize them when you go out and look for those things and see those things and validate it. But the number one thing I would probably recommend, like a new hunter, is just get out there. Like, you have to become a woodsman. You can't just you can't just go out and hunt. You have to learn the woods and learn the animals and the way they interact in those woods. And until you do that, it's going to be like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to bust deer. I've done it. I did it a bunch last year. The day I shot him, I busted a bunch of deer, more than I had all season, just getting blown at. But yeah, just get out there and learn the woods. Like, you have to learn the woods, because those deer live there every single day. They have the advantage. And until you learn the woods best you can, like, you'll see results, but it's just going to take some time.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, perfect. Well, Andrew, appreciate you hopping on this part of the episode, this podcast. By the way, guys, this is why we're because we got another segment coming up after this, but
yeah,
if you guys enjoyed these, let us know. I want to hear some reviews, by the way, of like if y'all like these stories, because we're going to do a lot more of them. Because again, Andrew, you're the one kind of kicking off for us, but we've got a lot of kind of guys in the I guess in the back burner, not on the back burner, but
in
guys
the hopper.
In the hopper. There you go. That's the correct term. Getting them on and kind of doing more of these, because I personally love it. Because I feel like as host, we interview so many different people. Some stuff, it's very interesting. We get in some really good conversations and we're really interested, but it kind of goes, like, no disrespect to any podcast guest, but it's like, it kind of goes in one ear out the other. Like, some stuff may stick, but some of them it's like, okay, now we're moving to the next guest and the next guest. Where compared with like when you're a listener, you can kind of, I guess, fine tune exactly which one you really like the most and really kind of key in on that. And I think me and Andrew, maybe just kind of at certain points kind of get bogged down with the conversations. And it's like great conversations. I really love it. Maybe some notes taken on it, but then we're off to the next conversation for the next episode and keep working through it. And it's like, I feel like some of that stuff kind of, I might not do the best job about taking notes down and actually applying some of it in the field. I can recite a lot of stuff that we've talked about on the podcast, but again, our goal is just to open up the interview and make sure that you guys, the listeners and the viewers, can get the very most out of it. And, we got to apply it even more so moving forward.
Yeah, I suck at applying it. I'll just be honest. I'm not good at it.
So that's awesome. But anyways, Andrew, appreciate you joining us for the podcast, man. Best of luck to you this season. And yeah, dude, hopefully you're going to be rocking one of these new Southern Outdoorsman hats. And hey, we got some.
I'm a big hat guy.
Well, listen, we got a couple right now that aren't quite available online, but you might be able to get your first pick of one.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Right. Sweet. Awesome.
No,
well,
you
Andrew,
guys are awesome. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. We'll hop over to the next segment. So,
all right, guys, that's going to do it for our listener success segment of the week. We're just starting these. This is the first one. So we actually just got into recording this outro and we're like, wait a minute, we're not doing it that way anymore. Yep. So yeah, restarting a little bit here. This past Monday, we interviewed Bronson Strickland, as you guys know, from Mississippi State. That was a great episode. We're getting a lot of feedback from it. Part 2 comes out this coming Monday, so y'all be watching for that. We get into a bunch more stuff in Part 2, including probably the highlight for me of Part 2 is buck movement as it relates to wind direction.
Yep.
How bucks are using the wind to move, or are they using the wind to move? You're going to have to wait till Monday to find out, unless you are a Patreon member. Part 2 is already live on Patreon, so those guys got early access. They didn't have to wait for it. But anyways, we're going to talk a little bit more about the GPS study here in a minute. First, let's talk about Andrew Butler's listener success story. Jacob, what did you think?
Killed a giant. I mean, so it was kind of funny. So you lined up. We've interviewed a few of these guys. Are going to come out over these next
we've
Thursday
done a
episodes.
couple.
And I didn't know who was who because you were kind of communicating. I was just kind of showing up, and y'all were talking about the deer, and I'm like, "What's the deer?" He's like, "You haven't seen the deer." I'm like, "I don't remember. I mean, I probably have, but I don't remember exactly which deer you killed." And you showed me the photo before we got started. I was like, "Dude, that thing's a giant
Stud."
Like, not only that, he said, I don't know if they actually weighed it or they just estimated it's like right around 300 pounds, which I completely agree. Like, one of my Iowa deer was in that 250 range, and this deer is considerably larger. But just like the rack, the whole 9 yards of it, the story was awesome. But dude, going into a spot and sitting it like 20-something times and continuously seeing bucks and deer is insane. Like
that just goes to show you got squeaky clean access.
Absolutely. And also you're in the spot that they want to be in. But like you said, you've got good enough access to get in and get out without getting busted. So, that's a spot I dream of, to be 100% honest.
Definitely.
But also makes you wonder how many times we've hunted areas and seen quite a few deer and just elected not to go back, and we just bounced around too much.
Oh, that's like 100%. Dude.
Yeah.
That's 100% it. And we've talked about that quite a bit over the last couple of years, trying to address that specifically. Not bounce around so much, and once you find something good, stick with it. Mm-hmm. And I tried to do that personally last year. It worked out pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like, I ended up killing several bucks last year that I probably wouldn't have killed if I didn't do that, and had a lot more encounters. So, I mean, I'm trying to get better about it. The thing is, it's hard. It's so popular right now, and like we do this to travel and hunt a lot, and I feel like that can be really fun. But if you go overboard with it, it's going to end up burning you because you're just bouncing around too much.
Yeah,
and like we all like to travel and go hunt different areas, but if you're like really trying to kill a deer, especially on your home place, or if you're hunting a specific deer, maybe doing a little bit less traveling is better, for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to locate some deer look, I got like a multi-year plan, okay, where I'm trying to find deer that I want to hunt, for consecutive years. So I've got cameras out on several different properties across the state now that I'm specifically trying to locate like really big deer, like bigger deer than I'm used to hunting. And over the next couple of years, I want to go and target these deer. And over the next couple of years, I want to travel less and hunt these spots more, that I'm more familiar with, that are closer to home, that I have greater access to. So it's like this year, we're not really doing anything crazy this year. We're going to Kansas. But outside of that, we got little trips here and there, but nothing crazy. It's not like we're going to be gone all hunting season or anything like that, which I'm actually very excited about because I feel like we're going to be a lot more effective that way. Or at least I don't know what you're doing.
No, I agree. There's one area I do want to go back to Tennessee, but at different time of the season than when I've been going. So other than that, I kind of agree. Like, I think the more you bounce around, like I've enjoyed the last 5-6 years doing that, and have had success, but not like a ton of success doing so. Like, I've killed some bucks, but like it's rewarding, it's fun, but it's one thing for a single guy to do it. It's another thing if you're married and have potential, and I have some kids trying to do all that. Like, it's a ton of stress. Like, I can't imagine. Again, don't have any experience, but I can see someone out there, like, you're doing one big trip a year. Like, you're gonna do a big out-of-state trip, go to the Midwest, wherever. Maybe you want to be crazy, go to South Florida, like Andrew wants to do at some point in the future.
Yeah, I'm down.
By all means, do it, but just realize if you do travel, probably one of the big, I'm trying to think what guest it was. Well, he's got a different perspective, but a guy like Jeremy Aaron, who's been on the podcast from Do It Yourself Hunter on YouTube, he loves to jump around. Okay. That guy, he will go and hunt a new spot every single year. So he doesn't really care about if he shows something on camera, he's like, if someone comes and finds my spot, that's fine because I'm probably not going to come back. Like there's a few areas he said he's gone back to multiple times, but a lot of times he jumps around. But one thing he does a lot of scouting, kind of a little preseason. He'll do trips with the wife, go out and just go see, kind of get a lay of the land of some things and then get out there and spend a lot of time out there and hunt. And, he kills a lot of deer doing that. But like the average guy that doesn't have like abundance of time, it's so difficult to do. So like if you do go out of state, say you're going to Ohio, you're going to Kansas, you're going to wherever, not a non-draw state, is to focus on finding an area you really like that has the diversity, has the habitat, everything you're looking for, maybe has the buck entries that you're looking for, both Pope and Young, Boone and Crockett, and just say, hey, I'm going to go hunt here. Go in with the mindset, I might not kill anything. There's a very high likelihood I'm not going to kill anything, but the thought process is I'm going to come to this place over the next 4 years, at least once a year for a week-long trip to build history with it, and that's where I think you're going to have a lot more success.
Yeah, okay. I'm curious on your thoughts on this. One, and Jeremy Aaron makes me think of this because when we interviewed Jeremy, he was open about the fact that he has a lot more time than most guys to hunt because, and I think he even said this in the episode, he set himself up from a young age. Like he worked hard when he was young to establish himself financially. And so now that he's at the age that he's at, he has a lot of freedom. Like he can kind of do what he wants. And I think he gave the advice in there. He's like, hey, young guys out there, if you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, maybe even late 20s, like take steps right now to set yourself up for the back end. Like you're going to want that. And if there's anything we've learned from interviewing 500, however many people we've interviewed, that is a very consistent factor. A lot of the guys that we interview who are really, really successful, especially public land guys, they're one of a couple things. Either they have a successful business that they can kind of step back from, provides good income for them, and they can kind of set their own schedule and hunt when they want and hunt a lot. They're retired, kind of in the same vein there, like maybe they got to retire early, they're still young enough to go out and do things, or they've taken care of themselves. I guess that's really the two things.
There's a couple careers.
A couple career type, like you'll have guys who are that was the third thing, they do like a landscape business and they just work.
They save their money up in the spring, summertime, early fall, and then they hopefully make enough that they can spread it out over the fall months and be able to hunt and have a little more freedom as long as they manage their money correctly.
A lot of trade guys.
Yeah, trade guys.
A lot of trade guys.
Also, because I kind of want to do a segment or like maybe even an episode on this of like for young people. If you do love hunting and you want a career that allows you to make like a good income but also have some flexibility, there's a couple of career paths that I'm aware of. Like one I wanted to do for a while, and I went to school, and after about a semester and a half I was like, not for me. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Is nursing. And if you're a travel nurse and you can work, say you're not a big turkey hunter and you work spring, late winter, spring through the summertime, you can make enough money that, if you manage everything correctly, you could take off 3 months during deer season and hunt all 3 months.
Yeah.
Or 4 months. And if you do that, by the way, especially if someone's out there as a travel nurse, I would love for you to reach out to us, info@southernoutdoorsman.com email address, and let us know, because that might be an interesting person to kind of have on as like a little segment talking about some career paths. Because I know a few different travel nurses. None of them are like hunters at all, but it's just interesting to kind of see. So that is a huge commonality between some of our more successful deer hunters is they have quite a bit of time. They are in a career that maybe they work for 7 days on, but they're off for 7 to 14 days.
Yeah,
and they can plan when they're working for a week and they're off for a week to 10 days or more. When that is, and be able to go hunt during that time period.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the other factor, the other side of that equation, there's the time. Just having a lot of time to hunt is one part of it, but also another side of that is having the freedom to kind of go when you want. That's another thing that Daniel Williams actually kind of touched on. That is being able to kind of choose when you go. Whether you're hunting off annual patterns, whether you're hunting off weather patterns or the rut, like whatever the case may be, if you can, on Monday, you can wake up and you can look at that weather forecast and you can look at your calendar or whatever, and you're like, man, Wednesday is the day to be able to go in there and kill a deer. Even if you can't hunt 5 consecutive days, but if you can hunt those really high odds days and you have the flexibility to be able to kind of pick and choose, Like that takes years to develop, but if you have that, that's another part of it as well. That is a commonality between a lot of these guys is they either have a lot of time and they can just hunt a lot, or they have tremendous flexibility, and so they can be there when they need to be.
Yeah.
I mean, because how many times does it happen, like especially when you were at your old job, where you're like, it's time, and you just can't get away.
Yeah,
you can't do it.
I'm sitting there, everybody's killing deer. I'm like, well, I'm at the office. This sucks.
There's nothing more depressing than that. But anyways, yeah, that's just a kind of interesting. I'd be interested to hear like if there's any like younger guys that listen to us that would want us to do an episode on that. Or like a segment or something.
Or if you have kids like in high school and they're trying to figure out what they want to do career-wise, whether they want to go to trade, go to college, whole 9 yards, maybe it's something you share with the kids about like, hey, if you really do like to do this, you want a good career path that you're going to make a good living at, but you want to have some flexibility, then you know that's another avenue as well.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so these listener success segments, they're going to be every Thursday for the foreseeable future. We're going to keep doing them. Appreciate everybody who's written in listener success stories. This is the first segment that we've done, but we've been sharing them on Facebook quite a bit, and we have had actually a couple more roll in. Yeah. That from years past that guys who just hadn't shared them up until that point. And we've had a couple on our Instagram too. If you want to have it featured on our socials or for a chance to be featured on the podcast, you need to go to the website and write in there on our listener success story submittal form, which you can find, and it'll let you plug in some pictures and give us the whole detail of the hunt and everything. And if you share it there, we'll definitely share it on social media unless you don't have any pictures or the pictures are like unshareable. And you might get featured on the podcast. Who knows?
Yep.
Who knows? But anyways, let's move on to the GPS study.
Yep.
So when we originally started this podcast, I had to start over because I had a total brain fart. What was it that you were saying? Like, what were some of the biggest takeaways?
I mean, the one of the biggest takeaways for me was the amount of different beds these bucks use over this 10-week period of time.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, you and me have gone back and forth on this in the past where for a long time I was more so kind of looking at some of these people that, either we've interviewed, like one comes to mind that actually would hunt buck beds and be successful doing so was Glenn Solomon.
Yeah.
And he's from Georgia. Again, he passed away, episode 116. Highly recommend listen back at it. But he was one of the first guys we interviewed talked about hunting, buck beds. Another one, Don Cicero, talked about hunting buck beds. I'm trying to think of some other ones. I think Travis Murray talked a little bit about buck beds a little bit in one of his episodes back in like 2020 timeframe, 2019. But I've just thought like, hey, a mature buck, he's going to have his, 4, 5, 6 places he's going to be at, and it's kind of roll a dice which bed he might be at. Well, based off this study and the majority of the age groups, and I try to find this, and I don't know if this was in this segment of the podcast or if it's in part 2 or if it's something we discussed off air, was the age structure of the buck's collared. But the age structure...
Oh yeah. We discussed it in part 1.
It's in part 1? Okay, I don't know how I missed it.
Because we got that right off the bat.
Okay. But it's like, what was it, 60 or almost 70% of deer were between 3.5 and 4.5 years old age range, which is going to be what majority of us would love to shoot. Like you shoot a really nice 3-year-old, a really nice 4-year-old, most of us are going to want to shoot that. Not everybody has the chance to be able to go shoot a 5, 6-year-old buck. So I really like that he explained that because when we originally got our hands on this data, we're like, man, how many like 1.5-year-old bucks are running around? Or 2.5-year-old bucks they get caught.
Yeah.
So a lot of these deer would classify as what the majority of us in the South would say is like a mature buck, that 3.5, 4.5-year-old age, getting into maturity.
Yeah, some people say 3.5, other people say 4.5. Well, I feel like 10 years ago it was 3.5, and then it got bumped forward, which is fine by me.
Back.
Or bump backward, whatever. So now it's kind of 4.5 is the consensus, which is fine by me again. But a lot of people still do consider a 3.5-year-old at least to be a shooter. Maybe not mature because they reach antler maturity, quote unquote, about 4 years old.
It's like on an SOA hunt, you could find a 3-year-old, 18-inch main beams, 16-inch inside spread, and so on. So if you're looking through that lens, I mean, depending on where you're at, you could, shoot some 3.5-year-olds. So what I'm saying is that was a large majority of what they're looking at. They had some deer collar. I think you mentioned he had a couple that were like 6 years old plus, and then they had a couple younger bucks that were collar as well. That was that 1.5 years old going, and then for 2 years, so by the time the study was done, they were 2.5. So that's interesting. But it was the amount of beds, individual beds, not going back. Like they may be using similar bedding areas, every day, every few days, but they're not going back to the specific same bed site really ever. Like I think it was 5% of $60. So Andrew, you want to calculate that for me real quick? 5% of $60. It's like $3 roughly.
Okay. I can't do that in my head.
Okay. Well, 10%.
Oh, I guess I could do it.
10% would be 6 deer.
Okay.
So 5% would be 3 deer.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yep, that's right. Good job.
Again, you can talk, you can read.
I can't do math.
There you go. So only $3, okay?
Yeah.
Out of 60 had fidelity going back to specific bed sites, as in they used the same bed site multiple times. Only 3 out of 60.
Well, okay, time out. I'm confused. You lost me there.
He said 5% of the bucks
Okay.
out of 60
Okay.
had fidelity going back to individual bed sites.
Did he say that?
Yeah, it's on the podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
I missed that.
Only
I interviewed the dude and I missed
only
it.
5%. So 5% of 60 would be 3 animals.
That's why you got to listen multiple times, because I interviewed him, edited it, and watched the premiere today, and I missed that.
Yeah, I saw that when I was cutting clips. So
okay.
it's in one of the clips.
Okay.
So only $3 had fidelity going back to individual beds. Okay.
Whoa.
So when you look at that and you go to the data, and he had the spreadsheet, I think some people, because I saw some comments like, "Oh, well, how many times?" It's only $3. Now it might have been the 3 oldest deer on the place. It might have been a couple 1-year-olds. I have no idea. 1.5-year-olds that were collared. He didn't have that specific data for us. Maybe when we get him back on the podcast, or maybe we can just give him a call. But hey, that was $3 at 5%.
Yeah.
What was the age on those deer? Just to let us know.
Well, yeah, that's the exciting thing too. Is before we even left that day, he was like, "Can I come back on?" Like he's excited to come back on the podcast and dive deeper into this data. And like I said, even on the call that we did with him before the podcast, he was asking us questions that they should go and look at in this data, which is really exciting. So, over the coming months and years, we're gonna get answers to these questions.
Yep. So, but I just where I'm getting at with the fidelity, like going back to individual beds, is like at least on that property with those $60 in an area of Mississippi that looks a lot like a lot of the South that we kind of have been around, where you get hunting clubs, lease, a little public land, whatever. Only 3% or only 5% of those bucks, 3 of those bucks actually had fidelity. So it kind of goes back to the whole mindset of like, if you're hunting individual buck beds, like you find a bed, kind of goes back to like what you mentioned in the podcast, put a camera on it. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, there was a nice, decent buck using it, but then there was another doe, some does using it, a spike, whatever, like a bunch of different deer were using the individual bed. I don't know how reliable it is, at least in our area of the country, like a lot of pines, a lot of thick cover to hunt individual buck beds. I think if you get, and this, I mentioned this in the podcast a little bit, there are areas in the Southeast, a lot more big woods, a lot less thick cover. Cover's very limited in some of those areas where I think there might be more bed fidelity, using the term he said, where they're going back to individual bed sites. But it's like, at what's the ratio? Like, how often are they doing it? Because, it might be they're using it, but it might be once or twice a week they're using that one individual bed versus never coming back to it for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I also saw some comments that were saying that those bucks that are, again, like you said a minute ago, that are going back to those beds over and over again, which even those deer seem like they weren't actually revisiting those beds a ton, based on what he said. A lot of people were like, well, maybe are those like the older bucks? And he didn't have an answer for us at the time. Mm-hmm. I think we'll find out pretty soon. But what's your take on that? Would you be surprised if they looked at these bucks that were kind of habitual with some of these beds, and they were like 2.5-year-olds?
It wouldn't surprise me. That's actually what I was going to say, like 1.5, 2.5-year-old bucks, because those deer have only lived for so long. They may just find an area that they just kind of like, and they're comfortable with it, and they haven't expanded out from there. So they have like, hey, mom always uses this little bedding thicket. I'm going to bed in the same bedding thicket. Actually, technically, mom should kick them away. They should relocate. But they get to the area at a year old, 1.5 years old, and they're like, well, I just like these couple areas. And they've never expanded out past that.
Yeah.
So it's like, it wouldn't surprise me potentially if it is younger bucks actually doing that. It may not be. Maybe come older bucks.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, actually. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Mm-hmm. And same thing with the older bucks. Like if I try to think that out and I think out the logic there, like, you would say that like older bucks have like honed it in, and they know these exact areas where they're safe, and they shrink their core range down. But I feel like on the same side of that coin, you could just as easily turn around and say, this buck knows this area so well, and he's bedded at so many places over the years that, like, why would he only have a couple beds? Like, he knows where he's safe.
Yeah.
And so it's not like he's locked down to these 3 little areas.
Now, one outlying factor, which we kind of touched on when we and I posted a reel about this, is how hunting pressure affects buck movement.
Yeah.
And within 3 days of hunters being on the landscape, the bucks changed their movement patterns. They weren't doing these longer paths to travel. It was a lot more tortuous, if that's the right word.
Tortuosity.
Where it's they're kind of bouncing back and forth, almost kind of like a web, kind of spiraling out from one spot, or one general area. They're kind of like moving around in different locations, but they're not covering a ton of distance in one straight line. But how does hunting pressure potentially affect the bedding? We never really had the details of like what exactly is the hunting pressure like on that property. I know it's a huntable property, where people do hunt, and I know some people have wrote comments in about, well, what about if there's like real high hunting pressure? Well, the thing is, if there's real high hunting pressure in Alabama, we've hunted some places with what I would call a lot of hunters. There's still so much abundance of thick cover. They're not even with if you put 1,000 people on one of these WMAs, if it's got a bunch of clear cuts. If that deer didn't want to have to leave the clear cut, he doesn't have to, and he doesn't have to use an individual bed because you get 50 to 100 acre clear cuts. Yeah. So it's like he has a bunch of options. It'd be different if you were maybe in an area, say like a big river bottom, not a lot of cover, or potentially more limited cover, a lot more old growth timber, or in big woods setting, again, not a lot of cover, big open woods, and you put 1,000 people there. That might change it up where they only have 2 or 3 locations that are the best spots. They can see the best, they can smell the best, they have the best security cover, everything. But I think in a lot of places, even when we're thinking about a lot of pressure down here, there's enough cover in the southeast for those bucks to go and hide and have a bunch of different bedding locations that, they might not have to relocate to just 1 or 2 specific locations.
Yeah, definitely. Also, hey, by the way, another thing that actually wouldn't, I'm going to make a prediction, okay? I bet what it might be, if they, like, let's say they go look at this handful of bucks that use the same beds over and over again. I'm gonna guess, and we'll see if I'm right. Hopefully, like we'll get the answer to this. I'm gonna guess that it will actually be, like 3 different ages of bucks. I bet that it's more of a buck personality thing than an age thing.
Yeah, you're probably right.
What's your take? You think?
I think that could be a good point because again, I go back to like Glenn Solomon. He killed a lot of his bucks, at least based off the one interview we did with him, in and around their beds where he jumped them during hunting season out of bed in one spot, see the deer, and then not hunt it again until the next year. And then in and around that date range, whenever that hunting season, that gun season came in, muzzleloader season, he was within shooting distance of that bed and he'd kill those deer. So, to me, it can't just be young deer. It would surprise me if it was all young deer. But I think, like you said, it's buck personality. Like every one of them is going to be doing something slightly different. Like some are more homebody, some are more mobile. And it's just like, if it's more of a homebody buck, maybe he just likes his small little core area that he likes to look at. By the way, I have to tell you off air, some listener wrote in about a couple other biologists we ought to get on that's doing similar studies in other places of the country.
Ooh, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, anyway, but another important factor I think from this first interview was not just the buck bedding, the buck fidelity, all that kind of stuff, but it was like looking at again some of the aerial imagery and the circuits these bucks were bedding in. Like a lot of one of the examples we pulled up, I forgot the number of the deer, but the slide is on the YouTube channel. Like you can, if you go watch the video of the podcast, you guys will see it. Is the buck that's bedding along the river.
Yep.
And it was kind of, if you looked at that map and had like just a general understanding of deer hunting, I think you could have walked in potentially like hunted. Like I think some of us would have looked at that peninsula that buck really kind of liked. Mm-hmm. Like he bedded around that peninsula. He had a bunch of other bed sites and bedding areas everywhere else. But it's like,
I think you're referring to something in part 2.
It's in part 1. I looked at it.
Really? Uh-huh. Are you talking about when we do the map and it goes through and it shows him bouncing around and moving?
Not just that, but when we pulled up the initial bed sites, when I asked him about the 100-yard, he said like 100 acre, I meant 100-yard area. Like,
okay.
He pulled up that example. But on that example, again, you'll see it on part 1. We go over it more in part 2. But like where that buck beds, I feel like probably a lot of our listeners and even us would have kind of just looking at that map like that looks like a really good travel corridor along that peninsula, along that bigger field next to the river. It'd just be a really good spot to potentially catch deer moving through. Yep. And I think someone you could have gone in there kind of blind, like, hey, that just looks like a good spot. Maybe had an opportunity at the deer, maybe not. But also, because this is flat land where they're at, when we're looking at aerial imagery on some of these slides, it's not like they're betting on some kind of point or some kind of like terrain feature.
Yeah.
Like at least topographical feature that you can see real easy. Because we had some other comments come in on YouTube, I think on the YouTube part. There's like, maybe it was on Facebook, about, bucks are betting on ridge points, win at their back the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, well, this place doesn't have ridge points, doesn't have any topography. And we will get into the whole wind-based betting in part 2. So make sure you listen on Monday's episode. But I really wish they would have a study and do another study, or someone's doing a study in hill country and seeing the relationship to some of those features. Like, are they betting a lot of times in ditches? Are they on points of ridges? Are they on secondary points? Are they on main points? Are they on the top of the ridge? Are they right on a habitat edge? Are they associated more so with habitat edges? Or are they associated more so in hill country on terrain features for betting?
Yeah, actually, I think Penn State did some stuff with that. Because back several years ago, Penn State was kind of known for doing some GPS stuff. I think I don't know if they were the first ones to the game, but they're the first ones that I saw who were doing that. And, it was a big deal. And I went back and I was kind of looking through some of their old stuff, which I haven't heard anything out of them in a long time. I don't know what's going on up there. If I'm just missing it, maybe they are putting stuff out and I'm missing it. But a couple weeks ago, I was looking through a bunch of stuff on Penn State's website, looking at these old studies, trying to dig up something that we could put on the podcast. And one of the things that I saw was they were looking at bucks and does in this hill country in Pennsylvania, and they were finding that these deer were selecting for really steep side slopes in mountain country, and they were showing like I think they even had an example of where a deer got bumped off of one of these big ridges it was hanging out on, and there was this big ridge point. It was up there, and it was just hanging around up there all the time. And then it gets bumped, and it goes right off that steep edge, and it just runs off. And then they sent people out to go look at the steep edge, and it's like a glade. It's really steep, kind of rocky, just nasty looking stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's where these deer were betting at when the pressure got on. So I found that interesting. But I'd love to talk to some people from Penn State more about that. But I bet you see that. I bet you see that with that data.
Yeah, that's why I think it'd be interesting to kind of compare the two, kind of back and forth. But again, it was a very interesting discussion. I think part one's really good. Part 2 complements part 1 so well, I feel like.
Yes.
Getting maybe a little bit more into the theories on different things and, what data backs certain things up, start talking about lunar positioning, like moon phase, moon positioning, winds, wind direction associated with buck movement coming out of a bed. Just all kinds of interesting stuff, especially in part 2. But I'll say this, if you enjoyed this interview, again, with Bronson Strickland, and you want to see more of that, let us know. We'd love to see, either some messages from you guys on social media, but especially, on our contact page on the southernoutdoorsman.com. And just let us know, what did you like about, what are some follow-up questions you may have? And again, we're going to try to get Bronson back on, hopefully maybe sometime this summer. And if we can get enough follow-up questions that we can give him ahead of time and he can actually look through some of the data or get a grad student, maybe that's already looking at some of the stuff to piece apart some of that data for us, we might be able to get some of that stuff answered for you. So again, if you have questions, write them in specifically, actually scrap social media, on the contact form on the southernoutdoorsman.com website. And we'll kind of put all those together, send them over to Bronson, and just see what he can tease out first, and see if there's enough there we can kind of do a follow up to this series. Yeah,
because this interview, just full disclosure with the audience, we didn't have an outline or anything going into it. We just went in. We gave them some highlights of what we were interested in, and we just kind of went in there off the cuff. I think for the next one, we're gonna have a list of things that we're gonna go in with, whether it be listener questions or some of the things we've already discussed here, and we're gonna go down and see what, and we're gonna give them to them ahead of time. I'll shoot them an email after this and be like, these are the things that we want to talk about, and we'll do it a lot more structured next time, which I'm really excited about. I'm again just super excited about the fact that they're looking at these things and that they're excited to get it out to us. So it's going to be a very interesting couple months, couple years as they go through all this data. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
You got anything else on part 1?
Not on part 1. Part 2, we have a lot
Got a lot to say about part
even
2.
A lot more. So I'll say this: if you enjoyed part 1, please share it with some friends and family or buddies.
Yeah.
It really does help out the show. The show's growing; it's doing fantastic. But we would love to get this out to some new people. So if you got even some casual buddies that aren't necessarily real big into some of the hunting tactics that we normally talk about, but they may find this interesting, go shoot this over to them, whether it's on social media or just text it to them. Text them a link to the video
Or some of the clips, too.
or some of the clips.
Some
yeah,
very digestible, quick hitters. If you got that buddy who you're like, buck bedding in the South, that's not how it works. You can take one of these clips and just send it to him. It's like 8 minutes long.
yeah, very
Be like,
digestible.
here, this proves me right, or this proves you wrong.
Yeah. So again, just anything y'all can do about sharing the podcast we tremendously appreciate it. It's awesome to kind of see not only the impact that the show makes from, someone likes it for the entertainment style, but also you might share it with somebody and they might actually come away with not only more knowledge, but maybe more confidence going into the season. Hopefully have a better season than they did last year.
Yeah, definitely. Before we kick it over to some listener questions, I'm going to say that next week we're going to be at the Mobile Hunters Expo in Dalton, Georgia. And these hats are going to be available there. So we've worn these a couple times over these last couple weeks. Me and Jacob actually wore the same hat today. This is the slew camo. So we had the old school camo hat last year that a bunch of you guys bought in the trucker style. This is like the goat rope style. It's an unstructured hat. Great for doing fly downs. I might say that this is the most comfortable
It's
hat.
the most comfortable hat, hands down.
On Earth. Possibly.
I haven't tried that many hats. I've tried a bunch
Dude,
of hats. That's
I've
a
tried
very
a bunch of hats.
That's a bold statement.
Dude, it is the most comfortable hat on Earth.
Okay, it's a very comfortable hat.
It is very comfortable, and I like it because it looks good. I'll throw it on, when we're going out or something. But I like it from a comfort standpoint for actually going out in the field and doing stuff with it. Mm-hmm. Like me and my stepdad did like a canoe backpack camping trip a couple weeks ago, and I was wearing it the whole time, and it wicks sweat really well.
Yeah.
And it's unstructured, so it's like very comfortable, and it's just like the perfect in the field hat for me. Mm-hmm. And so I snagged a couple of them out of our inventory, and I got one of them that's like my town hat, and one of them that's my woods hat. Because the woods hat ain't never gonna be the same after that trip. It smells like sweat and campfire and like all kinds of stuff. But anyways, so we got it in this, but we also have a new camo pattern. It's called Delta. It's an old school camo pattern just like this, but it's darker, and I actually like it more for bow hunting, turkey hunting, squirrel hunting, whatever, than this. This is like very light colored camo. Yep. This may be more of like your duck type camo. Or if you're hunting around cutovers, I guess this is kind of like that camo pattern. The other one I actually like more for just how dark it is. So it's a really cool looking hat. They're going to be available first at the Mobile Hunters Expo in person, and if we don't sell out of them there, they will go online. We shouldn't sell out of them there. We might. I don't know. It'd be great if we did. But if they don't sell out there, they're going to go live on our website, so we'll make sure everybody knows about that. But get dibs in Georgia, baby.
Yeah.
Be selling them there.
Yeah, get them in Georgia first. So, yeah, Mobile Hunter Expo is going to be fantastic. Again, get some great guest speakers. Again, quite a few past podcast guests. Got Kyle Libar, Alan Summerford from Land Legacy Native Habitat Project going to be there. Our buddy Shane Parker is going to be there speaking. Stuart Keen's going to be there speaking on some mountain hunting for all of our mountain hunters. And Tom Brownlee is going to be there. Kind of forgot about Tom Brownlee. Episode, I think, 315. Can you look that up real quick, Tom Brownlee?
Dude.
Since you got your phone pulled up.
Man, you would ask
So
me to
Tom
do
Brownlee, his episode, I think it was Truth About Scent or
Yep.
something like that, was by far one of our most popular episodes we've ever put out. And he is a very interesting guy.
Yep, 315. Good job.
I remember that one. But go back and listen to episode 315 before you come to the Mobile Hunter Expo, because he's going to be doing some live Q&As as well after he gets done with the seminar. I'll be running the seminar. So come with all of your questions, because he's going to be able to answer anything in regards to scent dispersion. It is very, very fascinating. So make sure you're there, and again, come ask some questions. But again, I'm really excited to see Tom Brownlee there.
Yeah, that's going to be super fun. All right, we'll kick it over to some listener Q&As. We're going to kick this one off with, oh, by the way, you can submit your Q&As on the website. There's a submission form there. Don't send them to us on social media. We probably won't get them because we get a lot of messages on social media. But if you go through the website and you use that form, we will get it.
So, right. And there's also a link down in the show notes below on audio feed and the video feed, again, for listener success story. Listener Q&As. Both of those forms down there, you get those filled out, and again, we'll answer those on these Thursday episodes. So, yeah, we haven't done one of these in a little bit, so I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah, this one is from Billy Andruski. I think.
Oh yeah, he already. Yeah, that's right, Andrewski. He said his nickname. He messaged us about something because I think he wanted a sticker, and he goes by something else. He's like, I should have used my middle name. I got his email.
Yeah,
right
was
here.
he's one of the reviews, right?
Yeah,
okay.
He's one of the reviews.
Because I was like, crap, did we already do this question?
No.
But I know we didn't do this question because I got an answer straight from the horse's mouth on this one.
Oh yeah. Billy Shaw.
Okay. All right. He said he's from Georgia. He said, "Hey guys, longtime listener, first time caller. After listening to the episode with Daniel Williams, I started backdating my daylight bucks. I quickly realized I see bucks on almost every sit, but they're often 1.5 to 2.5 year olds, or mature bucks are being killed on the same ridge on same date range on different ends of the club. So my question is, are we only supposed to backdate the mature bucks, or do you think if you saw a 2.5-year-old daylight on a certain date that he will daylight as a 3.5-year-old a year later?" So for this one, I just literally screenshotted it and texted it straight to Daniel. And here's what Daniel said. He said, "I've seen all ages of bucks on the same camera during the specific kill dates. However, a buck's habits tend to stay the same from 1.5 to 2.5. Then at 3.5, he will learn new habits, as in does, survival, territorial competition, that stays generally the same from then on. So 1.5 to 2.5, they're kind of the same. At 3.5, he kind of goes through a change, goes through puberty, if you will, not literally, but he's maturing to like a different. If he doesn't get killed, it's because he changed and he's smarter at that point. Let's see. That being said, there will be specific places where young bucks will be all over the camera during those dates, but 0, in all caps, mature bucks. Stay away from those. Basically, you have 3 categories: a doe hole, which is all does on camera; a spike hole, which is 1.5 to 2.5-year-old bucks on camera; and a kill hole, any mature buck on camera during daylight, regardless of any other deer on camera. One picture of a mature buck during daylight is good enough for a sit those dates, and there will be immature bucks there too that are local since birth. The younger deer usually will get their pic taken multiple times, whereas the mature bucks usually will not be there long, typically 1 to 3 days per buck. To specifically answer the question, there will usually be a local buck stay local if the competition allows for it. That will depend on the year he turns 3.5 and what he decides to do once he quote-unquote becomes a man. No different than a teenager getting that itch to get out of dad's house when his hormones hit. My advice would be keep a camera up this year to see what he does, and even hunt there on those dates if possible, if there is no other pics those dates of mature bucks somewhere else. I never sit on a spot unless I have a picture of a mature buck. There are too many places where you will only see young deer every year." So that kind of answers your question. Do you have anything to color that with, add to it, anything like that?
No. What? So he called it a kill hole, a doe hole, and a spike hole, right?
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, another thing too that kind of reminded me of this question is what Daniel said about when these deer show up, okay, on camera. And we have our mountain spot that sets up just like this, where we have cell cameras out on scrapes, which is really helpful because you're monitoring it in real time, which for me, just the way that I pay attention to things, it helps me retain that information. Because when I look at my camera, if it's not a cell camera and I'm flipping through, I don't pay as good attention. But if I'm oh, it's the 12th and I got 3 pictures today, I'll remember that. On those cameras, again, 2 cell cameras, 2 community scrapes, about 250 yards apart, we'd have mature bucks roll through, and this is exactly what Daniel said. You'd have mature bucks roll through, and then a couple days later, you'd have all these immature bucks roll through. And so the mature bucks have come and gone by the time you're seeing all those immature bucks, the mature bucks have already come and gone. Mm-hmm. And so I think that kind of gets to the heart of that question right there is if you're seeing 1.5 and 2.5-year-old bucks, then, the mature deer maybe have already moved on if you're talking about the rut, because I guess they do change, as they go on, like Daniel said. But that's kind of exactly where my mind went, was that example that we had just in our own experience. Yep. Where, they're rolling through. And so I don't know, be curious. We have 2 years of data. We could probably go back and see, because there's a lot of mature or immature deer in there that we did not kill.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know. Interesting stuff. But yeah, straight from Daniel. So, That reminds me, if you write in some Q&As that are guest specific, like that one, we'll try to reach out to that guest and get them to answer it directly. Okay. Next up, let's see here. We got Chris Whitcomb from Florida. He said, wind direction setup. I have a block of public that has a 100-acre square clear cut burned last year. Directly south of that, separated by a dirt access trail, is about 80 acres of thick 8-year-old pines full of briars where they are bedding. There's a SMZ that runs the full length of the east sides, and it's full of water oak, live oak, and a creek. The dominant wind is going to be coming from the northeast. I'm having a hard time thinking of where to put a lock on. Do you ever run into situations where a great-looking area just isn't huntable because of the wind? How would y'all go about setting up on this? All right, I'm going to let you take that first.
Remind me, is the cover on the south side? You specify that?
Directly south of that is about 80 acres of thick. Yeah, so it's south.
And he's got to come from the south?
There's an SMZ that runs
the road.
The dominant wind. I'm having a hard time thinking of where to put my lock on. Okay, wait.
It's above that. You said something about a road bed.
There's an SMZ that runs the full length of the east sides, and it's full of water oak and a creek. The dominant wind is going to be coming from the northeast. I'm having a hard time figuring out where to access it. Okay, yeah, so the thick stuff is separated by a dirt access trail.
So that's where he's got to come in from. So he's got to come in from the south to the area. I mean, if that's your only access into that block, I mean, if it's a northeast wind, actually a northeast wind wouldn't be bad because it's going to be quartering across your face walking in. If you're, say you got to walk in from the west and you got to walk east if you can, if that's where the roadbed comes in from. It may not. He may be saying he's got to come in from the east specifically. But, you know, if you got to come in from the west, that's great because the wind's in your face and also the wind's in the face for the deer, you know, hopefully coming out of bed. Then they're going to come out and feed in that 1-year-old burned clear cut. Because if it's burned last year, all that stuff this summer is going to be probably, you know, chest high. And they're definitely going to be feeding in that and probably even bedding that maybe at some point in the season. The thing is, anytime you get a situation like that, I'm just always, I would recommend two things. Yeah, if you can put trail cameras out, that's great. But also it's like, if you have time to be able to do observation sits, especially before season comes in, like don't have a weapon with you. Can't have a weapon. Just go hang up the tree. Like, what was it? Scott Seals talked about doing that. Was it Scott or somebody? We talked to somebody last year, or maybe within the last 2 years, that would literally go hang a stand, like get in his climber, like a week before season came in, and just like sat spots like off.
I think that was Scott.
I think it was Scott.
Scott, comment if that was you.
But like sitting off the area and seeing how the deer, I think he was talking about for feed trees and seeing which tree they're coming to.
Yep.
You could do the same thing there where like, hey, if that's your wind, set far enough off a crosswind to those deer that, you know, hopefully, you know, they're not going to be in shooting range, but you're going to be able to see where they're coming in and out of and then make a decision from there because, I mean, you might be surprised. You might have deer coming from an area you might not expect. Just even though the thickest cover may be, you know, on the south side of that opening, that 100-acre clear cut or whatever, how big that clear cut is, they may come from some other area that you may, you know, realize after you sit one of those big openings. So, I mean, I would try to do that. And also look at where the sign is, like walking the edge. If you're trying to hunt that clear cut around that clear cut, walking the whole perimeter around there and all the habitat edges and figure out where the trail's coming in and out.
Yeah.
And tracks, because there might be a big section of it because of the wind and your axis you can't hunt without having your wind blow back into stuff. And you might find some other access trails, not access trails, but trails deer are using to get into those areas that are more subtle, but those might be the spots you actually kill on.
Yeah, another thing too that I would maybe try to take advantage of in the off season is learning how the wind interacts in this area. Because one, first of all, if your dominant wind is northeast, it's not always northeast. Like I'd be curious to know, like could you hunt it on that odd south wind, even though, you know, maybe on that south wind you got a warm front coming in typically. Could you access it and hunt it on that wind or any other wind for that matter, whenever you get a chance to? Like, are there different setups in there? Another thing too is if you're in Florida, I'm assuming it's pretty flat, but that doesn't mean that wind is not going to swirl and stuff, especially when you're talking about hunting near a big clear cut like you're talking about, because we were talking about this on our Patreon Zoom room the other day. When you have like a tree line and you have a big open space and that tree line is like, you know, it's like a wall sticking up, and that wind is coming across the landscape and it hits that wall, it's probably going to curl up and ramp and do something. It might swirl right there. Actually, Doug White, PK, talked about this. You're already looking up that episode,
I'm trying
aren't
to
you?
find his episode.
So he talked about this. He hunts Florida, and he would go out and intentionally find places where the wind swirls like this. The other school of thought, too, especially if you're planning on hunting this during the rut, and especially if you're planning on hunting it in the rut with a rifle or a muzzleloader, would be go in there and maybe like Jacob said, go do an observation sit or go in there and find the sign and then figure everything else later. Like, don't worry about the dominant wind. Don't worry about where you think you ought to be. Like, go in there and let the deer tell you what they're doing and then figure out how to hunt them there.
Okay, I found the episode. So Doug White, otherwise known as Palmetto Kid, a.k.a. PK, from Florida, exactly where this listener's coming from. The episode, I would highly recommend listening to this episode because he talks about like this exact situation. This is episode 388, Big Buck Behavior Patterns with Doug White, and he specifically talks about situations just like what we're describing here. Again, that's with Doug White, again, episode 388. And, you know, he talked about like finding those areas, kind of like what he's talking about in the situation with those clear cuts, and when the SMZ comes up, where that SMZ and the corner of one of those clear cuts meet, that's an area the wind's probably going to swirl at and kick around, and that's probably where you're going to find a big scrape at. If you put a camera there, you're probably going to have bucks in that area, but the hard thing is, and he talks about in the episode, it's hard for a bow hunter to get in there, but if you're a gun hunter and you can sit off that thing 150 yards and shoot into that spot,
you're in good shape.
You're in better shape because the wind might be good for you, but if you were 100 yards closer, your wind's swirling in that spot, but that's why that buck's coming through and checking it because all the wind's swirling and he can smell everything around him.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're hunting it during the rut. That's another thing about a lot of guys that we've talked to in the past. I mean, we've had all kinds on here, but one thing that some people will say, like Jamie McKay, Michael Perry come to mind, is just because the wind is wrong, like if it's the rut and it's a gun hunt and the wind is wrong, that they'll just go in there and hunt it anyways. Because you never know. Like, you never know if the buck's so rutted up that he doesn't care. You don't know if you get a good strong thermal rise and your scent's just going up into the stratosphere, which, I mean, we can get on a tangent here with this. We're already almost at an hour. But do you want to explain that a little bit, especially on a clear cut, for instance? You say you got a cold morning and, let's say you got a nice light northeast breeze, 5, maybe 10 miles an hour. But you've got bluebird skies, low pressure. Explain what your scent might do in that situation.
Well, it depends. If you're sitting on the sunny side of the clear cut, say it's a morning hunt, so you're on the west, like south, not really southwest corner, like west corner, northwest corner, north corner of that clear cut, something like that, where the sun's hitting that edge. Even if the wind's blowing back into the woods where the deer are coming from, or even blowing out into the clear cut, maybe where you don't want it to go if they're bedding out there, if it's very light, like light and variable winds, or like under like 3 mile an hour, and if it's like bluebird skies, high pressure, and it is like that sun's warming you up, especially on a cooler morning, you'll see like the fog out of your mouth come up, or if you drop milkweed, when it hits that sunlight, it's just going like straight up and then kind of carrying out and can carry over, a lot of deer. That's where you hear a lot of like old timers talk about when they were using climbers back in the day. They're trying to climb 30, 40 feet up a tree, or even high. I've heard some people talk about climbing higher with a climber and adjusting it a bunch of times going up. But it's because they didn't care about wind, but they knew if they got it high enough up on those right condition days, there's zero chance of deer smelling them.
Yes.
Okay, because that scent's carrying so far before potentially it hits something that brings that scent back down to the ground. And that's why you hear a lot of people talk about climbing real high, and that's part of the reason. But yeah, the thermals, like me and Thomas had a situation like this in Arkansas, which I've talked about on the podcast. Clear cut, wrong wind that morning. The wind switched on us, I guess. We just didn't get an accurate wind reading. And the wind was blowing into the clear cut. I wanted the wind to blow into the woods because we were sitting on the edge of the woods. I didn't think the deer would come from. I thought they would come from the far side, and that's where the deer did come from. But because of the thermals lighting up that side, that ridge that we were on, that clear cut, we were literally watching our fog and like drop. I didn't have milkweed at the time. I had like one of those puffer bottles of like powder. And it would like go out into that clear cut, and it would just go straight up in the air. And when we're at, we're climbing, we were in climbers, we were probably 20 feet up the tree. It felt kind of strong where we were at, and it was, but the second it hit that sun, it's almost like that wind slowed down, like, I don't know, that warmer air sucking up, and it just made that vortex going straight up in the air. So Thomas was able to kill a buck that morning, and we had deer all around us, quote unquote, right downwind of us. But if you weren't dropping milkweed or like a puffer bottle or something in order to see what that air current was doing, you would have thought that whatever scent control method you're using was working. But in all reality, it was that the thermal was working for you. So that can definitely play a factor for you. But the thing is, if you have like high humidity does not work great for like thermals rising. It will still happen, but if it's high humidity, muggy day, it's like you'll just see it like settle. Like if it's like light and variable, like you'll just like see that crap settle down.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's not really going to help me, especially if you're bow hunting, the deer getting fairly close to you. So, but anyways, it's super interesting. That's part of the reason why you need to go out there and try to do maybe observation sits. And again, listen to episode 388 with Doug White, and maybe give you a slightly different perspective on that. Also, by the way, if that roadbed that bisects the thick cover of the 8-year-old pines and the clear cut.
Yep.
If it's closed access and you can't drive down it, check your rules and regulations in Florida. I don't know your rules and regulations, but if it's closed access, you can't drive down it. Might be a great spot to set up if you get to use a gun or shotgun or muzzler at some point in the season, catching those deer coming out of that thicket going into the clear cut or vice versa, especially during the rut. That might actually be your best spot.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually the very first place my mind went to when I read the question was if that roadbed is closed and you can legally hunt it with a rifle, that's where I'd be.
Yep.
That's definitely where I'd watch that roadbed. But anyways, all right, that's all we had time for this week. We got a couple more Q&A submissions in there, but y'all keep putting them in. We're going to get back into doing these. These Thursday episodes kind of taking on a little new life. We're going to have kind of some segments. So we're going to have the listener success segment. We're going to have the episode breakdown segment. We're going to have the Q&A segment. So, yeah.
Any reviews?
Oh, yeah. We'll read 2 reviews. How about that?
Here, you do it and then read one and then pass it to me. I'll just read it off your phone.
Okay.
By the way, everybody's stickers will go out a little bit later. Actually, it'll go out tomorrow after this episode comes out. Stickers will go out. So, again, if you already had written in when we were doing this little competition and everybody kind of sent in your email addresses and not email addresses, addresses, we're sending your stickers out for everyone that left us new reviews of the last couple of weeks. So, appreciate that.
Yep. I'm trying to remember the last one. Okay. Was it I'd rather be hunting than working? Was that the last one we read?
I don't know. That's a great question.
I don't think it is.
Which one? I was the one I struggled on. You had Thomas read it too, so you should know what
yeah,
it is.
because you can't read. Okay, yeah. All right, we got it. I'd rather be hunting than working. Said very informative with great guests. 5 stars. I've been listening since around episode 250 and haven't missed out, but a couple since. My favorite episode thus far is episode 290 with Richard Fott. I've actually went back and listened to it several times, and me and my son have both capitalized using the calling tactics that Richard talked about. Thanks for a great show with good guests. All right, I gave you an easy one. Appreciate the review.
Oh, this is a great one. We just talked about him too. Okay.
Speaking of the devil.
So speaking about PK and Doug White, aka the real PK, wrote in a review here. 5 stars, missing the Dilla. Being great hearing Michael Pike lately. Missed ya, bud. So, pretty short and easy. Yeah, Doug, trying to get Michael back on. He'll be back on for a little segment, probably in a couple of weeks. I talked to him about that today.
Yep.
Long-time listeners will know all about Michael Pike.
The Dilla.
And his nickname, The Dilla. So, anyways, appreciate everybody listening to this podcast. Appreciate everybody watching this podcast. Appreciate everybody as well sharing these episodes, especially some of these episodes that we've been doing the last few weeks. It's been awesome kind of seeing some of y'all support and being active on social media as well. So, just do not miss Monday's episode for part 2 with Dr. Bronson Strickland from Mississippi State University's Deer Lab. And other than that, y'all have a great week, and we'll catch you back here on next Monday's episode See, I can't talk. Catch you back on next Monday's episode of the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast, guys. And remember, y'all stay Southern.